This is part 3 of my American horror series, in which I'm narrating one scary story from every US state. Make sure to check out parts 1 and 2 via the links down below. Now, without further ado, let's continue on our road trip down Route 666. I live in Iowa. If you've never paid us a visit, then let me tell you a little bit about our state. We have cornfields. Lots and lots of cornfields. One grey afternoon, I was driving through the countryside, about 30 minutes outside of Farley. The road I was driving on was flanked by 2 of these cornfields on either side. They were tall and went on for miles. The closest thing to civilization nearby was a farm, so essentially, this was as close to the middle of nowhere as you could get without wandering off into the wilderness. As I made my way down the road, I came across something unexpected. A car stuck in a ditch next to the cornfield, and a thin, long-haired man frantically waving for help. I pulled up beside him and wound down my window to check what was wrong. "Hey stranger, having some car trouble here. Could you lend me a hand?" I nodded, pulled over in front of his car, and hopped out of my truck. "Damn man, what happened?" "Oh, the darndest thing. A damn critter jumped out of the corn here, and I swerved to miss it. Ended up in the ditch. No good deed goes unpunished, right?" I felt for the guy. I mean, his car was a hunk of old junk, and he looked and smelled like he hadn't had a shower since God knows when. Must have been down on his luck. "Sure man," I said. "I'll help you out." "Awesome, thanks so much. I've got a tow rope in the back seat of my car there. Go over and grab it, we can hook 'em up." I walked over to the guy's car and looked in through the window. I couldn't see a tow rope. Must have been stuck down there somewhere. I then reached for the door handle. Actually man," I said. "I have a tow rope in my truck. It's a tough one, and I know how to use it. My friend that's with me can help us too." Yeah, sure." I calmly began walking back to my truck and flashed the guy a friendly smile. But I didn't have a tow rope, and I didn't have a friend with me either. As I went to open that guy's car door, I saw something in the reflection of its window. 2 men hiding in the cornfield behind me. I got back to my truck, jumped inside, turned the keys, and floored it out of there. As I sped down the road, I looked in my rearview mirror. The long-haired man just stood there as 3 other men stood up and walked out of the corn. They all joined him and watched me as I drove away. These 3 new men were holding long objects, maybe metal poles or something like that. I couldn't quite make them out. Nor could I make out the license plate on the car. I just got the hell out of there. Sadly, without that information, there was little the police could do. They couldn't find the men or the car when they searched the road, and I never heard anything more about it from them. In hindsight, the man's car wasn't really all that stuck in the ditch. I should have been more cautious and sensed that something was up from the start. I'm just thankful they didn't pursue me. There are a lot of crazy stories from Florida, but I think my experience has to be considered one of the weirdest. It took place 2 years ago on a woody trail in Lee County, and I swear it's 100% true. My girlfriend and I were driving home one night, and at one point or other must have taken a wrong turn somewhere. We were coming home from a weekend break, and were taking an unfamiliar route back. It was dark, and our GPS wasn't working right on the country roads. We were both getting pretty frustrated when, by chance, we saw another car parked up ahead of us in the distance. All the doors of the vehicle opened, and 4 figures stepped out. Perfect, we thought. Maybe they can help us. I rolled down the driver's side window and slowly drove up to where they were. I called out to them, asking for directions. We must have only been about 20 feet away from them, and noticed that they were all standing with their backs to us. They were frozen still, completely motionless. "Hey, are you guys okay?" I asked. No response. I drove up right next to their car, and again, I asked, "Well, are you okay?" In total unison, they all turned their heads to look at me. And when I say their heads, I mean only their heads. Some of them twisted their heads so much they were on backwards. The rest of their bodies remained perfectly still. But the worst part was their faces. When I saw them, I swear I felt like I was going to faint. They were pale white and completely featureless, like store mannequins or crash test dummies. The one closest to our car started shaking its head, no. Its head was moving very fast and jerky, and only became faster and faster. They all turned their bodies to face us, and started slowly moving towards our car, their movements stiff and awkward. We didn't stick around to see any more. My girlfriend yelled "Drive," and believe me, I did. I looked back as we drove off, and they were all standing still again, except for the one that kept shaking its head real fast. Had I been the only one to have experienced this, I would have thought I was going crazy. Hell, everyone I've told has called me nuts. But my girlfriend can back me up, and neither of us will ever forget what we saw in those woods that night. Is there anyone else out there that's encountered something similar? We can't be the only ones. Back in 2008, I was taking a long trip through the USA, hitchhiking most of the way to save on travel expenses. At the time, I was in Connecticut and trying to get from New Haven to Hartford. This was actually near the end of my journey, as I'd started on the West Coast and had only had positive experiences the entire way. Friendly strangers offering me rides, kind locals offering me couches to sleep on, the whole shebang. Connecticut, unfortunately, is where my trip turned a little sour, and I finally came to realize the dangers of hitchhiking. Some guy I had just met offered me a ride up to Hartford. Said he was headed there himself, and wouldn't mind a little company on the journey. Sounded good to me. Nothing about him seemed suspicious or anything. Just a normal-looking dude. He was around 40 years old, muscular, like an outdoorsy type of guy. Had a picture of his family on the dashboard, a crucifix around his neck, and spoke real polite and friendly. We started rolling on down the road, and he gets to talking with me. Conversation was light-hearted and jovial, and we spent a lot of the time sitting back and listening to country music on the radio. I asked him what he had been up to that day before he picked me up. He told me nothing major, just saying goodbye to a few friends he had been visiting in the area. Somewhere between New Haven and Meriden, this guy's demeanor suddenly changed. His face went from smiley to serious. The whole atmosphere in the vehicle became darker. I tried talking to him, but he stopped answering me. After about 10 minutes of the silent treatment, he finally spoke. "You know," he said, "when you asked me what I'd been up to all day, I told you I was saying goodbye to friends." Yeah, I replied, not really sure what he was getting at. "I ain't got no friends in New Haven." "Oh," I said, a little unsure of how to feel. There was a long pause as I waited for him to tell me the punchline to this joke or whatever he was building up to. He didn't say anything. I waited a good 30 seconds before asking, "So, what have you been doing all day then?" He turned off onto some thin, country road with trees lining either side. This definitely didn't feel right. The guy sniffed, and, with a blank expression, simply replied, "Digging a hole." My heart was pounding fast now, and became faster as we drove further down the lonely road, the surrounding trees becoming more dense. In that moment, I questioned whether jumping out of the car would have been an overreaction. I decided it wasn't. I unbuckled my seatbelt as the guy began gaining speed, opened the door, and flung myself out of the vehicle. I didn't know what this guy had planned for me, but I didn't want to be a part of it. I rolled on the ground, scraped but mostly uninjured. The guy's car came to a complete standstill up ahead of me, and the red reverse lights came on. He started flooring it in reverse, coming back to get me. I darted down the road, back the way we came, all the while with this guy catching back up to me. I had no choice now. I ran into the woods on my right side, where his car could no longer pursue me. I rushed through the foliage and heard the guy slam his car door, hollering about how I was a stupid so-and-so and how I wasn't going to get away. From the sounds of it, he was chasing behind me, though I didn't dare to turn back and look. I refused to stop moving. Adrenaline is a hell of a thing, and it carried me far enough and fast enough for that guy to lose track of me. When I finally felt like I had lost him, I found a spot to lay low and remained hidden in those woods for a good hour or so. I eventually made it back to the main road, found help, and called the police. I gave them a full description of the guy and his vehicle, and, being the sweethearts they were, they gave me a ride to the nearest town. My trip across the USA taught me many things, mainly that most people are inherently good, but I have no doubt I encountered evil that day. The way he was able to shift gears so quickly from friendly to stone cold, that's the part that keeps me up at night. I was walking alone through the woods one fall afternoon, drinking in a little nature. New Hampshire in the autumn is particularly beautiful in my opinion, and I like to get out as much as possible. I was strolling through a lonely part of the trail I was on. Nobody else was around, and there were no sounds except for the birdsong and the crunching of leaves under my boots. Out of the blue, I'm hit by this uncomfortable feeling. You know how in the movies, when someone says they feel like they're being watched? Well, this uncomfortableness was how I imagine that feels. Then, right up close to my ear, I hear a deep, raspy voice. "Hey, you want to see something?" It felt so close that I swear I could feel the breath of the speaker on my face. Up ahead, on a high, thick branch of an old, tall tree, I see the figure of a man standing with a noose around his neck. It's tied to the branch he's standing on. As my eyes meet his, he jumps. There was a horrible, loud crack as his neck snapped. His body flailed and jerked like a worm attached to a fishing hook. Even though he was high up and a ways away in the distance, I could seem to make out his face, clear as day. He was smiling like a maniac, with huge, wide eyes that had no eyelids. They looked like they were bulging out of his skull. That face, I'll never forget it. It's burnt into my mind. He continued writhing around as I instinctively turned away from the horrible sight. When I turned back to look again, there was nothing there. No man hanging from the tree, and nothing to suggest there had ever been anyone there in the first place. Everything was as it had been just a few moments before. Needless to say, I took the quickest route back out of those woods, paranoid that something was out there to get me. To this day, I haven't been able to wrap my head around what I saw. Maybe this was just a weird brain glitch, Or hell, maybe the mushrooms I had at lunch weren't shiitake after all. But my gut tells me this was something unnatural and otherworldly. I don't know, it just looked, sounded and felt all too real. A few years ago, my cousin and his father were out hunting in a remote section of southeast Wyoming. My cousin was young at the time, maybe 12 years old, and his old man was teaching him the ins and outs of hunting. They were both kitted out in high-vis jackets, along with all of the necessary hunting gear. At one point, his dad became a little distracted by something, and my cousin was free to wander around a little. He scoped out the area. It's then that he noticed a furry little creature atop an incline ahead of him. It was standing completely still, and made for an easy target. My cousin raised his rifle and steadied his aim, placing his sights firmly on the creature up ahead. The shot was pretty much guaranteed. He began to apply pressure to the trigger. Just before firing, his father came bounding over, and, with a scream of "Wait!" grabbed the barrel of the rifle and managed to push it off target. The shot rang out into the cold morning air. As it did, the critter my cousin was hoping to shoot rose up from the ground. It wasn't an animal at all. It was a Davy Crockett coonskin-style hat attached to the head of another startled hunter. Had my cousin taken his shot, had his father been just a fraction of a second slower to realize what was about to happen, that man's death would have been on my cousin's conscience for the rest of his life. Not something you want to carry with you from such a young age, that's for sure. My cousin learned a valuable lesson that day. Hunting's no game, and guns aren't toys. You always have to identify your prey and know with 100% certainty what you're pointing your weapon at. I'm sure the other hunter learned something important too. Don't go dressing up in animal furs out in the damn woods. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the stories. Many thanks to Anthony Salinas for making the thumbnail for this video. He's created all of the thumbnails for this series so far, and I think they've all turned out really amazing. Be sure to check him out via the links in the description below, and show him some much deserved support. Let him know that Lazy sent you. Also, a huge shout out to all of my supporters on Patreon, especially my biggest supporters. Ray Price Burton, Marley Wright, Crawford K. MacDonald, Scion of the Emperor, Monica Mendoza, Alex Greensall, Philip Westra, Gina Valera, Bob the Davil, Pro Cupidine Netta, John Crouch, James Labour, Crazy Masquerade, Stephanie, Charles Wilson, Fun with Failure, and Anime Wimp. Thank you guys so much. If you too would like to support me on Patreon, you can find the link for that in the description as well. Now smash that like button or I'll smash you. Stay spooky, and remember, the best things happen in the dark.